How do you deal with the stress in your life? That's the question that I've been asking myself this week. Let me know down in the comments how you deal with the stress in your day-to-day life. There's no way around it, whether that's the stress of like you get up in the morning, you're running late for work, or the stress of not having enough sleep from the night prior, or when somebody cuts you off whenever you're on your commute to work. It could be anything. It could be maybe you have debt or you have health things going on in your life. But for me, I've dealt with a lot of stress in my life with my military background and stuff like that, but also just in the mundane things. And I feel like there's a lot of times that I overreact to things. And over the past few years, I've tried to do better with that. I've tried therapy, and therapy was really helpful for me. But I've also, the only thing that I haven't experimented with was medication, but that was the whole reason why I decided to go to therapy, because I didn't want to go down the path of having to take medication or anything like that. And on top of reading books like the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, just Stoic philosophy, so Seneca, or reading Epictetus, those are all, or you could just read like the Daily Stoic daily. Again, not trying to tell you what to do with your life, but these are just things that have helped me. So those were just helpful as far as like me being able to be mindful of the stress that I was having at the moment. Again, I was talking to my buddy the other night. We were just on a Zoom call, and we hadn't talked in months, but I was just talking about like how we deal with stress. And for me, I like to try to like zoom out and view myself from the third person. And kind of like you do in a video game, right? And just observe your behavior from a third person's perspective. A lot of times I feel like it's easy for us to give advice to others, but it's hard for us to take our own advice or for us to give our own self-advice. And for me, viewing myself from the third person has been helpful. But really, those were helpful, but they didn't, I don't know. I came across a video the other day on YouTube that really had a big effect on like going from I think they call it cognitive dissonance, or maybe not cognitive dissonance, cognitive distortion. I think that's what my therapist would call it, right? And again, everybody has different versions of this. I'm not a therapist. If you're dealing with super high stress, definitely seek medical help or support. This isn't medical advice by any means, but for me, I watched this video and it's talking about how like stress comes from overstimulation. Like we know that, right? So if you're in an environment where there's a lot of different things going on, everybody has a certain level of like, whenever feel like I developed a pretty good muscle as far as like being able to operate and being overstimulated, because I was in the military. There'd be times where I'd have to shoot, move, and communicate. We'd be doing PT before we actually went out and did live fire with weapons and stuff. But then there was also it started with initiation and boot camp, where drill instructors are like surrounding you, screaming at you, and you still have to respond and still have to be coherent, and you still have to be able to move forward. And that was like one of the ultimate tests. And so again, with that, there's certain things that I feel like I'm pretty good when it comes to overstimulation, but it manifests, like it creeps up on me and stresses me out in other ways, right? And it's always hard to shake that stress whenever I'm dealing with, you get inside of your own head and you have these ways that from reading books. So like, some people say you should count. Some people say do box breathing, which those things work. But then for me, I just realized that I've been in a place where I'm like, I don't care. I just want to be mad right now. And let me know down in the comments if you've ever felt that way. I just want to be pissed off right now, and I don't want to fix it. And from what I've learned is that we shouldn't like resist our emotions, but we should learn to love our emotions. And when we learn to love our emotions, we allow them to run through us, right? So when we get angry, most people associate anger as a negative thing because you're usually mad at somebody or something. But there is a world that exists where you can just be angry and not take it out on someone else. Culture, I think, kind of deems this as weird. And I say it as weird because I remember being back in like middle school and high school, whenever I would hear kids be like, I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry. And you would just be like, dude, what is wrong with you? But when they say that they're angry, then they're not directing that anger towards an individual. It makes it so that, like, for me, now that I look at it as I'm older, it's like you're not hurting anybody when you have that anger. And I think for me, I've had times where I've taken my anger out on other people, not necessarily physically, but just like using my words and saying things that I regret later on. But when I'm by myself and I feel that anger, it's like, who do you take it out on? I think it's just all about loving the emotion and the stress that you have. There's different types of stress, right? So you have stress that is not good for you, that makes you angry, and then you have stress that is good for you. Think like lifting weights and stuff like that. And so how can you learn to love each of them? And then how can you desensitize yourself in those environments, right? The video I watched was from Joe Hudson, and it's talking about how you can combat stress with pleasure. And how can you feel pleasure? Well, you can just take deep, deep breaths. And that's kind of like the exercise that was in the video. And that was really helpful for me. Like, I'm literally listening to it in my truck. And he says, like, you need to close your eyes and stuff. I don't recommend closing your eyes while you're driving down the interstate. I didn't close my eyes, but just the simple thing of just taking 10 minutes or 15 minutes, not worrying about doing any meditation or doing anything like that feels like weird for you, but just simply doing something you do every single second of the day. It's just breathe, taking in like, and just feeling the pleasure that you have from that. And really what that, I feel like that does for your brain is that makes you focus. It takes your attention from what you were stressed about or frustrated with, and it brings you, it grounds you in reality, and it makes you more present, and it makes you realize our individual insignificance, right? We're this little tiny little speck in this massive thing that is the universe, and we only live for a short period of time, and then life goes on and people forget about us, and that's just the way it is. So that's just kind of my whole spiel this week, the things that I've been kind of focusing on. And really what's been helpful for me is like, as far as like a stress management, like people tell you all the time, you know, with stress management that you need to start to cut out all these different things. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but it's easy to tell people that. But for me, it's not been easy for me to take my own advice with that and just be like, okay, you got a lot of different things going on. You just need to take a second to rest. Because for me, I'm always on. I got my YouTube business. I got my 9-to-5 job. I'm a full-time dad. I got the chores and responsibilities of being a homeowner. And there's all these different things that build up and they can cause stress. But there's sometimes where you just got to take a break and just not do anything. Don't sit there and work while you're don't multitask, don't do anything. Just sit there and just breathe and just be. And that was, I'll be honest, man, that was like, I don't want to be dramatic and say it was life-changing, but it was pretty impactful this week. Just because by the time I got to my house, I felt refreshed and I felt happy. Let me know, are there days where you just are unhappy? There's been plenty of days where I can't put my finger on it, but for whatever reason, I'm just not happy. And I'm grateful for the things that I have, but again, it's just trying to, journaling can help with this too. I don't want to make this video too long, but there's been days where I just haven't been happy. And it's tough to feel that way all the time. And I don't think it's healthy to feel that way all the time. It's like, I never really thought about my emotions the way that I think about them now. Reading meditations, it's like, you want to be a good person. Your character is all that you have. Like the choices that you make define who you are. And you don't want to sacrifice or compromise your individual character or integrity. And, with emotions and stuff, it says that in Stoic philosophy, it says you want to be prepared to be able to move past, or to be able to withstand, I think is the better way of describing. You want to be able to withstand those hard times and still be able to be a person of good character. And it can maybe be interpreted that you need to be emotionally calloused by reading Stoic philosophy. I don't necessarily interpret that way, but I've been told by people is like, you need to be careful when you're just with Stoicism, because you can become just calloused and just emotionless. I don't think that is the case. We're emotional creatures, like by design, and I don't think that is something that we can get away from. And I'm not saying to avoid your emotions, I'm saying to be open to them. But at the same time, it's like only you can bring yourself back. So I realize a lot of times whenever I get frustrated or stressed that I want to vent to someone. Like, it's good, I think, to vent every now and then, but I might be subconsciously looking for attention or seeking validation. And so what I try to be mindful of is like, am I being healthy with what I'm doing right now? That's why I say it's good I recommend to anyone. Therapy is a great source of knowledge. Even if you're just going to therapy because you got some stuff going on, and I don't think about it, there's not as much of a stigma around it these days with guys, because a lot more guys are going to therapy now than before. But getting a good therapist is great for just getting some clarity on your emotions, on your individual self, and really being able to see who you are and uncovering things that have happened in your childhood maybe. Because it's insane how much programming happens when you're a child that you end up growing up with, and you start to piece things together why you are the way that you are. And a lot of it was just sometimes it was unintentional programming. Like your parents, I came from loving parents, but there were some qualities that I have that, man, I really wish that I didn't have to deal with, but I love my parents regardless. But it's things that came from my childhood. I had a lot of bad anxiety in my childhood, and it's because of experiences that I had. And sometimes we can't change those experiences. Well, sometimes we can't change those experiences, but what we can do is we can identify them, and we can figure out how to move forward and be the person that we want to be. So again, I don't want to make this video too long. I think I've been rambling for about like 13 minutes. I don't even know how much of this is going to be useful, but I wanted to make this video just talking about like how I manage stress now, and the kind of the epiphany, or just the aha moment that I had this week, because it was so helpful. And now I just kind of have that in my back pocket whenever I start to get stressed. I just sit there, focus on pleasure, and not pleasure in a sense of like, pleasure in just like simple pleasure. Like I sit here and I feel like just the great feeling of taking a deep breath and experiencing pleasure that way. And it just resets me. And that reset is something that I've been, I think, looking for a long time. There's been, I don't know, everybody's different, but for a long time, I've been figuring out, how do I break out of that cognitive distortion? Sometimes I've used music. Sometimes I'll listen to music, and that will kind of get my mind off of what's going on. Sometimes I'll maybe watch a TV show, or I'll do something like some sort of an activity, or I've been told to like try to do that alphabet backwards, so like redirecting. I've tried a lot of those things, and I guess this is like a form of redirecting, because you're slowing down your mind, and you're really focusing your mind on one specific thing. But it's from a place of love, and I think that's so important, to love yourself. And in a world that is so judgmental, it is. I don't care what anybody says. The world it is judgmental, because we all, in the adult world anyways, it's judgmental because you are being judged based off of performance, and to a degree you have to perform. Like, you got to pay bills, you have responsibilities, you have mouths to feed and things like that. You have to perform, and so people are judging you, so it creates an environment where we're going to be self-critical. We're going to be critical of ourselves, and it can get unhealthy if you're not careful about it. So I think that there should be self-love, and you should love yourself for who you are. And I know it's easier said than done. I'm not saying that, you know, there's people that have all kinds of problems that I couldn't even imagine, but it's just trying to get there and taking it one step at a time, I think is what I'm trying to just say in this video. But keep learning, keep growing, keep going, and I'll see you in the next video.